You know, sometimes a story breaks, and it feels bigger, almost like a movie plot. That's how this Kerala High Court case feels, the one involving Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan and his daughter, Veena T.
Oh, absolutely. It's got that sort of high-stakes drama feel
Mhm.
playing out right there in Cochin across Kerala.
Exactly. So we're talking about these alleged financial dealings between CMRL, that's Cochin Minerals and Rutile Limited, and Veena's IT firm, Exalogic Solutions, which, well, isn't operating anymore.
Right, and CMRL is a pretty significant company based in Kochi. What makes it so compelling, I think, is how it weaves together politics, business, family connections, all very tightly in Kerala's political scene.
Definitely. So for anyone trying to get up to speed, here's our mission.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack this. The core allegation. CMRL apparently paid Exalogic about 1.72 crore between 2017 and 2020.
Okay, 1.72 crore, that's a substantial amount.
It is. And the big question, according to the Income Tax Department's interim settlement board, is what did they get for it? Because the findings suggest maybe nothing. No IT services, no marketing, no software.
So like paying for, I don't know, a fancy meal and getting an empty plate.
That's a good way to put it. And this all really hit the public consciousness when a Malayalam newspaper reported on it, right?
Yeah, that report was key. It mentioned the Income Tax Board's findings and, crucially, hinted the payments might be because of their relationship with a prominent person.
Which, in Kerala, immediately makes everyone sit up and take notice. You know the context there.
Absolutely. And that's when Mathew Kuzhalnadan, the Congress MLA, steps into the picture.
Right. He's known for being quite persistent. His first move was to go to the Vigilance court in Muvattupusha.
Trying to get a vigilance probe started.
Exactly. He argued these payments weren't legitimate, that they were basically bribes. The theory was the chief minister used his influence for CMRL, and the payments to his daughter's firm were the payback.
The quid pro quo.
Precisely. But the Vigilance Court, back on May 6th this year, dismissed it. They said there wasn't enough prima facie evidence.
Meaning, sort of, not enough evidence on the face of it to directly link the money to a specific favor from the CM.
Yeah, that seems to be the gist. Proving that direct link in corruption cases, especially complex financial ones, is often the hardest part, isn't it?
It really is. You need that clear causal chain, which can be tough to establish up front.
But Kuzhalnadan didn't stop there. He filed a revision petition with the Kerala High Court.
Okay, taking it up a level.
And on June 18th, the High Court acted. They issued notices to Pinarayi Vijayan, to Veena T, to CMRL, and Exalogic. They all have to respond.
So the court wants to hear their side of the story. Do we know who's representing Vijayan and Veena?
Yes, Advocate Gilbert George Correa. And the court has set a hearing date July 2nd. That's one to watch.
Definitely. And wasn't there another petition too?
There was, by the late social activist Jarish Babu. His petition faced the same dismissal in the Vigilance Court.
But the High Court?
The High Court decided to hear his case too, scheduling it for July 3rd, the day after Kuzhalnadan's. It shows there's sustained pressure, you know.
It really does. Multiple angles trying to keep this issue alive.
So let's talk about CMRL for a sec. They make synthetic rutile.
Right, which is used in paints, titanium production.
Right.
It's a big industry. We're talking about materials for aerospace, medical implants even, not small stuff.
Not at all. So when allegations surfaced that they paid out 1.72 crore, possibly for nothing tangible, it raises eyebrows.
And you mentioned the SFIO cited an even higher figure later.
Exactly. The Serious Fraud Investigation Office, the SFIO, came up with 2.73 crore. So there's even some discrepancy on the total amount involved.
Which just adds another layer of questions, doesn't it?
It does. And Exalogic Solutions, Veena T's firm, now defunct. The deal was apparently 5 lakh a month for her personally and 3 lakh for the company.
So 8 lakh a month flowing from CMRL to Exalogic and Veena.
Supposedly for services, but here's the kicker. Reports suggest that during the income tax probe, CMRL's own staff admitted they didn't actually receive any services. No software, no consultancy, nothing.
Wow. That admission, if true, is pretty damning, isn't it? It directly contradicts the idea of a normal business transaction.
It totally undermines it. And that's the core of Kuzhalnadan's argument, going back to what you said, that these payments weren't for services rendered, but were essentially bribes linked to the chief minister's influence.
Which brings us back to the Vigilance Court dismissal. They needed that clear link, the quid pro quo, under the Prevention of Corruption Act. They felt it wasn't demonstrated clearly enough at that stage.
Right. Show us exactly how payment X led to favor Y from the CM.
But Kuzhalnadan's argument in the High Court must be that the lower court didn't weigh all the evidence properly.
That seems to be it. He's saying, look again, look closer, hoping the High Court will order a deeper investigation.
Meanwhile, the political reaction in Kerala must be intense.
Oh, completely. The Congress Party, people like Veena T, are hammering this, calling it corruption, demanding Vijayan resign, especially after the SFIO named Veena as an accused.
Standard opposition playbook. Seize on any potential scandal. It's a chance for them to gain political mileage, obviously.
Of course. But the CPIM, the ruling party, they're pushing back hard. P. Rajev, M.V. Govindan. They're calling it politically motivated.
The classic defense, it's just politics, an attack on us.
Yeah, and they point to earlier court decisions that didn't find corruption. Govindan even questioned the timing, suggesting it was maybe linked to their party Congress, trying to paint it as a conspiracy.
Bristling the motive, sowing doubt, also a standard defense tactic.
And the Chief Minister himself, he's been quite reserved publicly, hasn't directly addressed the High Court notice much.
What about that CBDT report, the one with the initials? PV, OC, RC.
Right, he denied being the PV listed there, along with Uman Shandy allegedly as OC and Ramesh Chennathala as RC. The CPIM line is firm. No improper money changed hands, deny and deflect.
A strategy to try and ride out the storm? And the BJP, are they getting involved?
They are. K. Surendran, the state president, is demanding accountability, trying to position the BJP as the clean party amidst all this.
So they see an opportunity too.
Definitely. And then you have the usual crossfire between Congress and CPIM, each accusing the other of being too close to the BJP. It's complicated.
Kerala politics in a nutshell, perhaps. Always complex.
Always. But then another major player entered the scene earlier this year, the SFIO.
The Serious Fraud Investigation Office.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds serious.
It is. The Union Ministry of Corporate Affairs asked them in January to probe CMRL, Exalogic, and also KSIDC, the Kerala State Industrial Development Corporation, which has a stake in CMRL.
So the central government is stepping in with its own investigators. That definitely raises the stakes. It's not just about the Prevention of Corruption Act now, is it?
No, the SFIO looks at potential fraud under the Companies Act. It's a different, potentially broader investigation into financial irregularities.
And they've already made some findings.
Big ones. They've named Veena T as the 11th accused in what they're calling a 182 crore financial fraud case linked back to CMRL.
182 crore, wow. And what are they alleging specifically against Veena and Exalogic?
They allege fraudulent payments of that 2.73 crore figure we mentioned earlier going to Exalogic. And they claim this was done using fake invoices and inflated expenses.
Fake invoices.
Yeah.
Inflated expenses. That suggests deliberate deception, not just a lack of services.
Exactly. It paints a picture of potential intent to defraud. And the legal consequences here could be much more severe.
How so?
The union government has already okayed prosecution proceedings against Veena. Notices from the Special Court for Economic Offenses in Cochin are expected.
Okay.
And they're using Section 447 of the Companies Act. That covers fraud over 10 lakh.
And the penalties.
Potentially up to 7 years in jail, plus a fine that could be 3 times the amount of the alleged fraud. So it's serious stuff.
Definitely ups the ante compared to the initial Vigilance case. What's Veena's response been?
Her public stance is that Exalogic did provide software services, that the payments were legitimate. She met with the SFIO in Chennai last October with her husband to give her statement.
So she's contesting the SFIO's allegations directly.
She is. But predictably, the opposition sees the SFIO charges as vindication, renewing calls for the CM's resignation.
And the CPIM.
They're sticking to their guns. It's a political hit job orchestrated by the BJP using central agencies.
And isn't there a challenge to the SFIO probe itself?
Yes, good point. There's a case in the Delhi High Court challenging the investigation, but the hearing for that isn't until July 2025, so that's another thread to follow long term.
Okay, so multiple legal fronts, political battles. Why should someone outside Kerala really track this? What's the bigger picture?
Well, I think fundamentally it's about public trust, isn't it? Chief Minister Vijayan has this image of being a strong leader. These kinds of allegations, especially involving family, inevitably raise questions.
And it potentially impacts the CPIM standing, especially if there's already some anti-incumbency sentiment.
For sure. It also shines a light on transparency and how business and politics mix, especially when state-owned entities like KSIDC are involved with private companies like CMRL. It raises questions about oversight.
Absolutely. The need for clear rules and safeguards when public and private interests intersect prevents potential conflicts of interest, or at least makes them transparent.
And we shouldn't forget the personal aspect. Veena T is a private individual caught in this massive political and legal storm largely because of who her father is.
Right. Regardless of the outcome, the personal cost, the scrutiny, it must be immense. That often gets lost in the headlines.
So, looking immediately ahead, the big dates are July 2nd and 3rd in the Kerala High Court for those petitions. We'll see if the High Court takes a different view than the Vigilance Court.
And watching how CMRL, Vijayan, Veena, and Exalogic respond to those high court notices within their 2-week deadline.
Exactly. And then there's the looming SFIO prosecution against Veena, which feels like perhaps the more legally potent threat right now.
It certainly seems to carry heavier potential consequences under the Companies Act. This whole thing feels like it's really just getting started in many ways.
It does, so many moving parts.
So to recap quickly, we have these core allegations about CMRL paying Veena's firm, Exalogic, around 1.7 to maybe 2.7 crore rupees, allegedly for no real services.
Right. Initial vigilance case dismissed, but now heading to the High Court with hearings July 2nd and 3rd.
And in parallel, a major SFIO investigation naming Veena as an accused in a larger fraud case, invoking serious charges under the Companies Act with prosecution approved.
Plus all the intense political fallout, the denials, the accusations. It's a real whirlwind. Keep an eye on those July dates and the SFIO case developing, including that Delhi High Court challenge way down the line in July 2025.
It's definitely a complex web.
Which kind of leaves us with this final thought, maybe. What does this whole affair really tell us about how business, politics, and, well, family interact in a place like Kerala? And what does it mean for accountability and transparency when government and private enterprise connect?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? Lots to think about as this continues to unfold.